Let's be honest here for a second. Most slasher franchises don't evolve, they just keep repeating themselves until people stop caring. You have the same mask, you have the same kills, you have the same final girl, but somehow, Scream didn't just survive that cycle, it rewrote the rules, and then they rewrote them again, and somehow kept doing it for almost 30 years. And the wild part is, Scream didn't change horror just once, it changed with horror. So today we're going to talk about how Scream kept evolving and why it's still one of the smartest slasher franchises ever made. Now when Scream came out in 1996, slashers were basically on life support, right? Audiences knew the formula, studios were recycling ideas, and horror fans were kind of starting to get a little bit bored with it. So Scream did something different. It didn't pretend that the audience didn't know the rules, it made the rules part of the movie. Suddenly the characters knew what a slasher was. They knew what gets you killed, and they still died anyway. That was the twist. The movie wasn't a parody of horror, it was weaponizing audience knowledge. Every phone call, every fake out, every kill, it was all saying, yeah, we know you've seen this before, and that self-awareness, that became Scream's identity. Now, one of the smartest things that the Scream franchise ever did was to make Ghostface a role, not a character. You see, in most slasher franchises, the killer is the franchise. You have Michael Myers from Halloween. Now, he is always going to be Michael Myers, nobody else. Jason from Friday the 13th is always going to be Jason. But in Scream, anybody, and I mean anybody, can be Ghostface, and that changes everything. Because the tension doesn't come from, can this killer be stopped? It more so comes from, who is it this time, why are they doing it, and then can they be stopped? You see, by doing that, every movie resets the threat. There's different motivations involved, different psychology, different relationships to the victims, and that flexibility lets Scream evolve without breaking its own logic. The mask stays similar throughout the whole thing, but the danger stays unpredictable, and that's very rare for slashers. Now here's the problem. Once Scream actually worked, it had to sequel itself, and we all know very well that sequels are dangerous, right? Especially when your whole thing is knowing the rules. So Scream 2 leaned into sequel expectations, right? Bigger body count, more suspects, more twist, but it also acknowledged the pressure of topping the original. Then Scream 3 pushed things even further. Hollywood satire, backstory retcons, a messier, more self-aware tone. These movies weren't perfect, but they were doing something important. They were commenting on the exact problems they were having. Most franchises hide their flaws, but Scream points at them and says, yeah, we know. Scream also quietly changed what a final girl could be. Sidney Prescott isn't just surviving, she's adapting. She becomes more self-aware with every single movie, more prepared, more hardened, and most slasher franchises keep their survivors static. They reset trauma between the sequels, but Scream doesn't. It lets trauma stack, and Sidney isn't strong despite what happened to her, she's strong because of it. And that long-term character continuity isn't common in slashers, and it's another reason why the franchise feels like it's growing, not just looping around because it's supposed to. Then something really interesting happened. Horror changed yet again. The late 2000s and early 2010s were all about remakes, reboots, and extreme violence, and Scream disappeared. Until Scream 4 showed up, and this might be the most underrated Scream movie in my opinion because it wasn't just coming back, it was criticizing the era it returned to. This movie is obsessed with fame, with internet culture, with being remembered. Everybody wants to be the victim, everybody wants to go viral, it's louder, it's meaner, and way more cynical. And instead of mocking slashers, Scream 4 is mocking our relationship with horror. This is where Scream stops being meta and starts getting uncomfortable. After Scream came out, a lot of slashers tried to copy its ideas. Suddenly, everything was so self-aware. Characters joked about horror tropes, movies winked at the audience, but most of them missed the point. Scream wasn't smart because it joked, it was smart because the story changed with the joke. Other movies added meta dialogue, but kept telling the same stories. They commented on cliches without actually doing anything different. Scream actually adjusted to its structure, different killers, different rules, and different cultural targets. That's why copycats faded and Scream kept going. Being self-aware isn't an evolution, but responding to your moment is. By the time Scream came back yet again, horror had changed yet again. Now we're in the era of legacy sequels. Old characters return, new characters take over, and nostalgia becomes part of the plot. Scream 5 leans fully into this. It introduces the idea of a requel, a reboot that still respects the original, and suddenly the biggest threat isn't just the killer, It's the fans, obsessive fandom, entitlement, the belief that stories owe you something. Scream 6 doubles down on that idea. Bigger scale, more confidence, less nostalgia safety net. At this point, Scream isn't just commenting on horror movies, it's commenting on the audience watching them. Most slasher franchises die because they refuse to change. They cling on to what worked once and hope that nostalgia does the rest of the work. Scream survived because it didn't do that. Every era of Scream responds to the moment that it exists in. We have the 90s, we have the sequel boom, the remake obsession, and the legacy sequel era. It doesn't predict trends, it reacts faster than anyone else, and that's why Scream still feels relevant even after all these years. So yeah, Scream didn't reinvent horror one time, it kept doing it over and over again, and as long as horror keeps changing, Scream probably will too, which honestly feels kind of fitting. And if you're a fan of the Scream franchise, make sure you check out this video right here. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.